Do what you want. If this is just a
Mhm.
fun chit chat, if I had food, I absolutely would be eating it. I was not that prepared.
This is the first thing that I've had like all day.
Oof, I had one of
And
those like energy bars because we had a meeting, and as we're sitting in the meeting, my boss was like, "We can go over, right? This is cool, right? Everybody's schedule's good." It's just like,
no, no, that's not how this works. Not how any of us work.
uh,
This works. But um, are we doing introductions? Ash is here. Hello, Ash.
yes. Hey, Ash. Yes. Okay, everybody. Hello. Oh, hey, KJ. Okay, so thanks for tuning in, y'all. I am Amanda the author, and this is my lovely guest, Chelsea, aka CM Lockhart. And today we're just gonna chat. It's just vibes. No rules, just vibes, as I said in my TikTok the other day. We're just gonna hang out for about an hour and talk about our projects, talk about writerly things. If there's any subject y'all would like us to chat about, let us know. I'm wanting to test this because I want to do more live shit stuff on my YouTube channel. And so if this works, this just might be the format because I'm really loving just the spontaneity of being live. So if y'all want to talk about anything in particular, get our opinions, let us know in the chat. Otherwise, I'm all right, Chelsea. I finished my short story for the Kindred Kingdoms anthology, which is an anthology that I did with the Diverse Books with Magic Facebook group. We did Girls of Might and Magic last year.
Mm-hmm.
This one is Kindred Kingdoms. Last year's one was like urban contemporary fantasy vibes. This one is epic. And I have to say, more power to the people writing epic fantasy because girl, that was so hard for me. I struggled with writing the epic fantasy it was 6,000 words. I think mine got to be like 6,500, but it was just so much. It was such a struggle for me.
What was okay? So what was hard for it for you? Because I feel like for me, whenever I tried to like write an urban fantasy, because one of the stories that I'm planning to write that I'm kind of working on in secret right now was supposed to be an urban fantasy, and I was like, you know what? This world got too many rules. Nah, bruh. So the fact that you were like, no, no, this is the hard part. I'm like, but it can be anything. That's the fun part. And it's
So,
interesting to me. Also, y'all,
okay.
I'm eating pizza. I'm on my last one. Ignore me. I'm sorry. It's just the first time I've eaten today, and Ben said I should take care of myself. So I'm
Got
trying.
to. Yeah, that's why I'm honestly, this is just chill. I'm like sitting here in my yoga pants, okay? Um, for me, what was hard was uh, I'm used to having an established world. I'm
Mhm.
used to having, okay, I'm writing this in New York, I'm writing this in Savannah, so I can kind of reference things that I know. I can reference contemporary culture, which is something that I really love and am hugely just inspired by. And I think that that's one of the difficulties. The other thing for me was just the verbiage and the language. And this is a note for you, Chelsea.
I'm trying. I'm trying so hard.
Uh, and really just pinning down where and what, because okay, when you're writing contemporary, right?
Hmm.
When you're writing, okay, I'm setting this in 2022. If I'm setting this in 2022, at least some kind of vibe of what I perceive this to be. uh let's say there's no COVID, but all of the historicity, all the history has happened. The fashion is the way it is, so skinny jeans are not the tea anymore. I kind of have an idea of what the rules are, but when I'm
Hmm.
setting it in an epic situation, I'm having to make up so much more. I'm
Mm.
having to decide, okay, what is the fashion inspiration here? What is kind of the time period inspiration? I went for kind of a Victorian-y type vibe
Hmm.
because the short story I wrote is inspired by Alice in Wonderland. And so, hey Deja. And so for me, it was also the setting, as Ash says as well, that was difficult. So it was, I think, having to account for a lot more that when you're writing something in a contemporary setting, you don't necessarily have to account for because it is just kind of there. Not to say
Hmm.
that like you know, in the House of Transcendence, I'm not making things up, but I think there's a more stable foundation because I know, okay, this is cell phones exist, social media exists, cars exist. You know, this is set in like 2022, so this street is what it is, and this restaurant is what it is, and you know, we had a Cheeto for a president and a black man before that. So like, I know those things. Whereas when it's epic, there's a lot more variables to account for.
Yeah, that
So
makes
that's why.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because even with We Are the Origin, I definitely had moments where I was just like, okay, how detailed am I going to get into this about how this works, and like as far as like technology and stuff? Because I was like, I got this comment a lot. You've read my book. Like the first half of it is very like what you'd expect from a fantasy. There's not a whole lot of technology. It seems very basic, but that's because of how that particular area of the realm is. It's not the entire realm. And part of the reason for that was because I was like, I don't want to have to figure out the rest. Like, I know you guys want, I would love to be able to be like, oh no, it was very, very big brained of me actually to do the different areas like this. No, honestly, they were leaving this one area and I was like, it's kind of difficult to work around some of the things that I built in, but I didn't want to change it. So I just kind of worked it into the world and it made more sense that way in the long run because of how the gods interact with each other. And so that's kind of how I world build. I watched a masterclass with Dan Brown, I want to say.
Mm.
And he was talking about characters at the time, but he was just basically like, he doesn't create a character. Like, he's not one of those people at the beginning where he knows all the characters who are going to be in his book. He only knows the characters that are like the main character, their love interest, and maybe like a sidekick, right? But then as the story goes along, as the story determines that there needs to be someone else, that's when he creates the character.
Right.
And I take the same kind of approach toward world building. It's just like when I need to figure this out, that's when I'll decide, okay, how does this work into the world and does it work into the world? You know, there are definitely some core aspects of it. Like I knew that there were going to be, you know, 5 gods and I knew that how the realm was going to be split up and I knew that they were going to be different, but I wasn't sure yet how exactly that will work out. And some of it just like fell into place and then some of it was just like, oh, this doesn't make sense if I said this here. So one of these two things has to change. And you know, that comes with like editing and going back and so on and so forth. But I don't know, I like the freedom of it because for me, the thing that you like about urban fantasy is like of having that stable foundation already set for you is the thing that I kind of hate about urban fantasy because I'm like there are rules here, there's a history, there are things that have happened, there are things that you can't just pretend don't exist, you
One
know.
second, there's a spider. I'm trying to get rid of this fucking spider.
Oh no, you
Ooh.
handle that, doll, because if it was me the stream would be over.
Oh no, no, ma'am. See, this is why. See, this is the fun of live. Okay, it's somewhere else. I'm just hoping it don't blow on me. Anyway,
This is my mug that Ben got for me.
what did it say?
Future best-selling author.
Well, that's true. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about how your book is going, how the book tour and the promo and all that's going.
I have a book tour. Did you arrange that for me?
No. How is your pre-promo going?
I need you to know that your look of surprise was everything.
I mean, I don't have the time, but I could give you some advice and shit.
Oh
Ooh, this is
I'm
a
sorry.
gnarly looking spider. No, baby. You might just have to die today.
If y'all ever
Lay
wanted
down
to
the ground.
know why I don't go outside, what she's dealing with right now, why I don't go. Oh, that's my Bluetooth name. I love it. I love it. But no, my stuff is going really well. I did a why am I covering my mouth like I'm still eating? I'm so sorry. I did my first TikTok live today, which was really fun.
Nice.
and unexpected. So I started out doing it with Neeks, and we did writing sprints. We got through one sprint, and then it kind of evolved into chatting. And then someone else asked to be on, and then I talked with them. Her name is Phoebe. She lives in the UK. She's like in university, about to go to school for like the arts and comic creation. And I was just like, that's dope.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And that's what I did today. But as far as my book, what do I have? I'm not. It's so interesting because I feel like
I know, KJ, right?
April until October, isn't that the whole year?
That's 6 months, yeah.
Yeesh. But no, I'm not doing a blog tour essentially, but I did reach out to some booktubers. So, I can say that Bow Ties and Books agreed to review my book, and I was like freaking out, and I screamed at Amanda, and I was like, "Oh my god!"
And that is everything. That's so exciting. She's gonna love it. We all know she's gonna love it.
Y'all, actually, her pronouns are not her.
I'm sorry.
Their pronouns are y'all pronouns, plural pronouns.
So it's so exciting. They are going to love your book. Thank you for correcting me on the pronoun front.
Yeah, I try to be understanding. I know some people don't appreciate it, but I'm just kind of like, I've learned that being considerate of people is very easy. You know?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely think yeah, I mean, it's simple. If somebody says, this is how I present myself to the world, this is who I am, then you should be cognizant of their pronouns. Y'all is coming to love it. This is really exciting. So when do you hear back from them? Are they doing a video? Are they doing
I have no idea.
Okay.
I just asked if they would be willing to read and review the book, and I literally screamed because they responded and they were like, they were willing to, and that it was one of their anticipated releases for the year. And I was just like, you did not just tell me that, because now my entire life has been made, because like somebody is like, I am anticipating your book. What? I'm dead. I'm dead. I am no longer of this plane of the universe, and that is okay. So
that's so exciting. I just mean, like, so are you doing? I've got my eyes all swivel now.
Peeled.
I just mean, are you? So your book is coming out in less than 60 days at this point, which I know I speak for pretty much everybody on the live, all of us, when I say I cannot wait to have a physical copy in my hands. But how is that process? This is kind of your first like fantasy book launch and whatnot. So how has that process been going for you? I didn't mean how's the tour as if you had set something up. I meant how's the process going for you of going to launch your book?
Honestly, it's going way better than anything that I could have expected. Only because like I'm one of those people where like I try to be optimistic, but also I like have in the back of my mind like this could absolutely tank. Like people might not want anything to do with my book, and it's just kind of like what is it, a safety mechanism essentially, so that if it does tank, it's just kind of like, okay, well, I hoped for the best, but I expected the worst type thing. But everything has been like going so far a lot better than I thought it would. And I'm just really grateful for that. Like there are actually people pre-ordering the book. There are people talking about it. There are people who are like, the cover is beautiful. There's, Bow Ties and Books, who was like, sharing it with people completely unprompted. I had no idea until I think Deja is the one who told me that they had done something on it. So I'm just really overwhelmed, but like in a good way, if that makes sense. But other than that, the process is going pretty smoothly. I did pay for an editor, so I'm supposed to get edits back in about 2 weeks, like the final edits. I've made a couple changes based on the feedback, because I think most of you guys have actually read We Are the Origin in the chat. You were one of my beta readers, so got feedback, tweaked it, And I'm excited. I got a map. I have an official map now. I have some
Right.
exclusive art that I can send out with my book. And things are going really well. I'm excited for the second book. I have a lot of things that I want to include, so I'm getting really excited to like start work on that. And yeah, yeah, it's going really well. How's in the House of Transcendence? Because you have been okay. So I'm going to tell you guys this. Me and Amanda are critique partners, and I talk to her like legit every day. And
Right.
I have the privilege of like reading her drafts as she's creating them. And it's so wild to me how crazy freaking talented she is, because it's just like every time she creates a new draft, it's just like, oh my God, how are you so good at this? This is amazing. And it's just like literally watching, like, you know, like how you guys watch like TV and you have like all these amazing chefs, and then they're like, this is how like a chef who is an amateur does this, and this is how a chef who's intermediate does it, and this is how like a Michelin star chef is going to do it. You know, I feel like every time she creates a draft, she's like just moving up the ranks into like a Michelin star chef, and it's just kind of like, how did you have the same thing that you had that before and you turned it into this? This is amazing. What? So I'm just
I
freaking out. I'm
just put
so
on
ready for you guys.
mascara. Don't make me cry. It's not waterproof.
I'm not trying to make you cry. I just want to like, I don't know. I just want to sing your praises, because I'm amazed and it's impressive. And I'm just like, I'm so ready for y'all to read this book, because I know it's going to be everything. And I'm just excited about it. Let me turn my phone off because it's over here vibrating and I need it to not.
No, I'm really excited to work on it. It's going well. I'm on still on chapter 5 rewrites. I put a pause on it because I was working on that short story, but tonight I'm excited to get back to it. I actively took a couple days off from doing things. I gave myself that rest because
Good
I
job.
needed it. Still found myself in that pool of like toxic productivity of feeling like, oh, I have to do something and feeling guilty.
Mm-hmm.
But I, at that point, just folded laundry. And it was like, this is the thing that I'm doing.
Yep.
I'm productive because I'm folding laundry. And so that was nice. But I cannot wait to get back to it. I miss it. I am excited about this world. I'm working with cover designers now. I have 2 that I'm like talking to get a cover for, and I don't know. I just can't wait.
It's going to be
So
awesome.
there's going to be here before I know it.
It is. It creeps up on you quick. And it's just kind of like, because I'm like, I have time, I have time, I have time. And then I'm like, oh my God, June is like almost a month away. Am I
Oh, yeah.
ready? And oh, that's something that we can talk about. So on my TikTok, I ask people like, how long do you have to sit on feedback before you do something about it, right? And I realized that my time between getting feedback and being able to do something about it is getting like much shorter, especially throughout this process of having beta readers. Because I think, excuse me, not even I think, this is the first time that I've really opened up my book to feedback from other people before I put it out in the world. And it's just kind of like, at first I was just like, ah, and now I'm just kind of like, okay, no, I see what you're saying. I could
Right.
take it from a much more objective place. And I was really proud of myself today, because today I got feedback from one of my beta readers, because for those of you who did it, y'all know that I had a deadline, because I was like, if I don't have it back by this point, I can't do anything with it, right?
Right.
I sent an email out today just to follow up, to be like, hey, to the people who haven't sent it, like, hey, there's like a week left before I'm going to need this feedback. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to do anything with it. And most of them got back to me and they were like, hey, I'll have it to you ASAP. Not a problem. But one person emailed me and they were like, hey, I'm not going to be able to finish the book. And basically they were just like, they didn't care for it. They were like, there was things too much for them to remember, and they couldn't really get into it or whatever. And I was like, okay, that's fair, that's valid. And I feel like if that had happened at the beginning, of this journey, that would have like sent me spiraling like, oh my God, my book's not good. It's terrible. I don't know what I'm doing. I probably should either be putting this out. I need to do X, Y, and Z. And now I'm just kind of like, okay, I understand that not everyone's going to finish the book. Like, and then I think about how many books I have on my shelf that are by amazing authors who I have no issues with their writing style or the story. I just didn't finish the book because I wasn't as into it as I needed to be to keep up with it. And I just took it in stride. So I was really proud of myself for that. And I wanted to share it because I needed to. So yeah.
Growth.
Growth. You know, and it's fun when you can see it, you know, because literally at the beginning of this, I was like, would have cried, would have needed serious help. But yeah.
Right. Usually, yeah, I feel you. When I reread over my own work, I need at least a month. I agree, Deja. Yeah, I think let's see. I am working on my third full book. That's mine, my own book. And so I think feedback has been a little bit easier, but I will say, just kind of keeping it transparent with everybody, this book has been kind of one of the hardest books I've written. Not one of. This book has been the hardest book I've written because with my series, I had a lot of fire. I had a lot of, okay, vampires, witches, political shit, you know, but there wasn't really any mystery. This book, a core element of it is a mystery. And we have all read books and all seen movies and TV shows where you clock the mystery within the first 5 minutes. And for some people, that's fine. Some people enjoy the going, all right, I know who done it, but I want to see us get there. I still want to get there and see how, because I know who, but I want to see how. And some other people, it will turn them off, and they'll just be, well, why would I continue reading this? If part of the fun of a mystery is figuring out the mystery, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I was right. So that was a hard element. I think I also got quite a bit of beta feedback this round, just on the characterization of my main character. So, you know, one of the things that I did is that, you know, my main character, Zora, she's a necromancer, and she's the line for her has always been that she's afraid of her powers, because who wouldn't be afraid of being, you see ghosts everywhere. You see them, they want to talk to you, they want to touch you and impart their memories so you can kind of help them. You could raise the dead, so you bring life back into a corpse. That shit is scary.
It's terrifying.
Anybody would be terrified, right? And with her using her powers for money to bring money to her family, of course that's an added layer of pressure and being scared, because you don't have a choice. Choice, you know. But the first version of Zora, and Chelsea can attest to this because she was one of my first readers, was somebody who was very timid, somebody who was very unsure of themselves, and down on her luck, literally. Like, a lot of just bad things were happening to her. Some of it was strategic, right? Like, she spends her 21st birthday alone. That is kind of a strategic thing. But some of it was not necessarily needed, of, you know, going to the extreme of showing her being down on her luck. So a lot of the feedback this round with this book was very candid, and I am very appreciative of having the people in my life who are very honest and who want to give me their opinion and see this book be its best. Because y'all honestly could have been like, no notes.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
I don't I don't want that energy though, because I remember like before Keeping Promises, when I thought I was going to write a book and I was still on Wattpad and I was still very new, wasn't even really thinking about taking it seriously. I was just trying to get better at writing. And I was asking people like, hey, can you give me feedback? And then like, it would be like, yeah, it's good. It's fine. And I'm like, y'all are not helping me. Y'all are really out here trying to see me fail. Why?
Right. So, you know, I wanted also to maybe not have Zora be I didn't want to go kind of stereotypical route of her being very like just cold and exacting and um, not nice, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized that I couldn't make her the other side, which is just completely timid with who she was as a person and
Yeah.
insecure of her personhood. Uh, because she's a black woman, she's a plus size black woman, and I made her insecure of her personhood at first, and not knowing how to do things that ultimately she would want to do and know how to do, right? Like her hair and her nails and clothes. So I settled somewhere in the middle, and I'm really happy with Zora's characterization now because she's a thrifty queen. She's somebody who's resourceful. One of my favorite scenes I've written so far is she keeps salt with her to stave off ghosts, and she's at this party and runs out of salt. And
Mm-hmm.
so instead of being like, "Oh my God, no," she looks at a table and sees margarita salt and is like,
That's so.
starts throwing margarita salt at the ghost. And because she's resourceful, and it's like, this shit might work. Who knows? But I know that I don't want this ghost near me, so we're just gonna give it a try. And she's more discerning and more, it's not that she's cold or closed off, she's just very protective of herself
Mm-hmm.
because she's had this trauma and has been through these things. And I really, and she's confident again in her personhood and who she is, but it's just this one aspect of her she does not like and terrifies her, and she wishes with everything that she could just kind of that like, if I could just do this one thing, I'd be set. I love
Mm-hmm.
myself, but if I could have this one thing, I'd be like the ultimate me. And kind of her journey is realizing that she's always been that girl, always been the ultimate her, and the powers are just something she has to control.
Yeah. And that's why I really love this version of the book. Just like because Zora's character, and even not even just her character, like all of your characters have gone through major overhauls with
Right.
each, version of the book, but they get better each and every time. And but they never lose the core of who they are. And I just really, that's why I said you have a talent. And I'm just like, it's amazing to like actually see it in real time because as authors, a lot of times we see the finished version. We don't,
Right.
we very rarely get to see someone else's process from first draft to, published book. And, being a part of your process and like witnessing it, it's just like, this is really cool, you know? And this is
Mm-hmm.
like, this is dope. This is amazing. And like, you see the talent of writing, and the talent of writing is not necessarily being able to create a story. The talent of writing is being able to refine a story into something that people want to read, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's the big thing, and some people struggle with it more than others, and everybody has their own process to finding what works for them. But it's just like I said, it's fun, honestly, to be able to witness someone's creation and creative process. I don't know if you guys have ever seen like glass blowing on
Oh
Netflix,
yeah.
but it's kind of amazing where you see like the raw materials that someone has, and all these artisans have these same exact materials, and they create such wildly different things based purely off of their imagination and their own skill. And then you can see them where it's just like, okay, well, I thought I was going to do this, but I'm going to do this instead. And it's amazing, even with the same techniques, the same skills, vastly different things. And I feel like writing is the same way. We all have the same raw
Right.
materials, and we're all going through our own process, and it's the same skills, like, typing, plotting, coming up with characters and compelling character arts, whether it be, romance or growth or friendship or whatever it is. We all have the same tools, but we all create vastly different projects and vastly different works of art. And it's just, I don't know, that's amazing to me.
It is, and I think that kind of segues into one of the topics I talked about yesterday, across social, of what do you think is better or whatever is, or easier, funner, is drafting versus revising or rewriting. Because to your point about, that's when you really get to make a story and refine it, is in the rewrite section. And when you
Mm-hmm.
have stepped away from the kind of mad fervor. I said it was like, I was trying to explain it to my husband. I was like, it's like when you're drafting, it's like your brain is a child and you
Mm-hmm.
have given it candy and coffee and compliments, and you're like, go get weird. It's a big open field. Here's your candy, here's your fuel. Go get weird, run wild. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what drafting is. You're just throwing it all out. The more books you have, or if you have put a book out into the world, you might be a little bit more timid, because I think there's always that part that writers get to, especially when they have put something out in the world where it's like a doubtful part. But for the most part, when you're drafting, you're just like that kid running free. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you're rewriting, you're having to kind of rein it in and be like, okay, now we're gonna brush our teeth. Now we're gonna learn our ABCs. Now we're gonna do this, this, and that to really make this a whole like
I
capable
think
person,
it's
which
like
is yeah,
school. Like when you're drafting, that's recess.
right,
That's the part where you get to go free. But then it's just like, at some point recess is going to be over. You're gonna have to come back in. And drafting usually doesn't take as long as revising, and it doesn't require as
right.
much effort, as much focus. It's just a lot more difficult. But I think drafting is fun when I'm writing something that I feel confident in, which
Mm.
is such a weird way to put it, but it's just like, I don't know if you have this problem. I mean, you can like let me know if this is just a me thing. But if I'm writing a story that the way I always refer to it is like it's not ready yet, like it's an idea in the back of my head and I know I want to write this story, it's just not ready yet, or I'm not ready. I don't have the skills or the knowledge, or I'm missing some critical piece to tell this story the way that I want to tell it. And so it's just kind of like, and when I'm writing a story like that, it's not fun. And I'm just kind of like, I'm having to push my way through it and force myself to write it. And I'm just kind of like, this ain't it, you know? Drafting is not fun then, but like We Are the Origin, I had so much fun drafting We Are the Origin because I was like, ooh, this could happen, or ooh, that could happen. Or I was like, ooh, I could do this, and I could just work that back in. So if y'all read the book and y'all see other things coming back in, please know that a lot of it was not intentional. It just kind of happened that way. But it was fun,
Right.
But editing is where I would say drafting is fun, but editing is where I take pride in my work, if that makes
Oh,
sense.
right. I like that. Yeah.
Because once I edit, that's me usually a lot more sober, going back through it and reading it and being like, yo, I actually did this. Like, I wrote this. Like, who came up with this? Why is this good? But then
Oh, I did.
re-
I did. I'm the drama. I'm the author.
like, I don't know if you guys have been editing because I talk about this a lot on my channel, but I edit as I go. And I know that's such terrible advice, but it's the only way my brain allows me to work. And
Yes,
as as I'm editing, I will go back and read through, then I'll get to the end and I'm like, where's the rest? And then my brain will be like, you gotta write it, bruh. And I'm like, okay.
No, I mean, I feel you. I think so. I also think it's a case by case basis, because um with To A Sarah with Love, I
Mhm.
and with Two Lars in Desperation, I got a lot of really great feedback. I got notes with Alaris. My homegirl Tidra said there needs to be more tension.
Mhm.
So really, her note about tension is how I restructured Alaris, where it kind of starts with them about to go and get their tags.
Mhm.
Whereas I think the first draft that didn't happen until chapter 3, so it was kind of just making sure I'm starting as late in the action as possible to ramp up the tension.
Mhm.
But aside from that note, there wasn't really too much that I didn't already know I needed to do.
Mhm.
Whereas with this book, because I was still pinning down Zora's characterization, um, writing it was okay, but I'm really having more fun and more passion and rediscovering my love for the story in the rewrites, because I know exactly who I'm writing. And I think that that's maybe something that's important to carry forward, which is that if you are starting to write and you can't pin down the characterization of your characters, of your main character especially, maybe you need to percolate a little bit more, because I wrote a whole book with her, with me not really having a firm grasp, or maybe the characterization was off. And so now with this rewrite, I'm fully rewriting. This is not like a line edit revising. I'm rewriting a lot of reactions, a lot of moments, a lot of how would she react now that she's more confident, now that she's this, and how would, you know, her best friend Tamar react now that they don't start off in a frenemy way, now that they start off with him being very much like a fun older brother who will read you down, but who's going to be like, no, I'm going to give you what you need to be successful. And you belong in this world and I want you here. How am I going to do that? But I mean, like I said, I think I'm rediscovering my love. So we have this question: how do y'all stop yourselves from self-editing while drafting? That's my biggest problem. I get too critical instead of letting the creativity flow. You said you edit as you go, though.
Yeah.
Do you actively edit as you're writing, or do you write one day then come back and edit the next? What is that process for you?
Okay, so for me, it depends. I would say it usually depends, but 9 times out of 10, I would say no, always, pretty much always. There are exceptions when I don't, but I write on one day, and then when I come back to write, before I write the next chapter, I reread what I wrote. And the reason I do this is because I don't like rewriting at the end. I don't like getting to the end of my story because I did this before, and I have a full novel in my drafts sitting there because it needs rewrites, but the whole thing is written, and I just do not want to go back and try to fix it. And I can pinpoint where it went wrong. I just don't want to do it. My brain does not work that way because I've already received that serotonin for accomplishment, and therefore I cannot go back and undo it. So for me, basically, I'll write it, and then once I'm done, I'll read it the next day. And if I know where I'm going from there, then I will keep going. So when I say I edit, basically what I'm saying is I rewrite. And a really good example for this would be with We Are the Origin. The first chapter, one of the pieces of feedback that I have received was there's a certain plot point that is not revealed until much later on in the book. And that plot point is, why did Brandy leave the shadows?
Right.
The original version of the book started with that plot point of the reason why she left. But my very first piece of feedback from Ben, he was like, no, there's like, if I already know this, there's no tension. You don't need to do this. And so instead of being like, okay, he doesn't like it, but I'm going to keep writing from this point forward and then figure it out at the end, I just deleted the whole chapter. It was like 4,000 words. I just deleted it, moved it to my
I
graveyard.
remember that. And then we started doing our sprints. Right.
And I just started over. And as I go along, if you guys watched my writing sprints with Amanda, or just follow along on like my podcast or wherever I talk about writing, I will 100% like delete 4,000 words at a time if I feel like it's not serving the manuscript, if I feel like I can't do anything with it, if I feel like this isn't working. But to that end, I don't do line edits. I don't do, oh, this doesn't sound right. If it doesn't sound right, but the content is there, I can work that out later. But if person, let's say like person A, Brandy, is supposed to be over here in Lyndall's domain, and I wrote her heading to Asari's, that doesn't make sense, because if I wrote her going to Asari's domain and she needs to be in Lyndall's, then that the entire story after that isn't going to make sense. It's a ripple effect. And that's how, so that's what I mean when I say I edit. So I do those rewrites, those major rewrites for content as I'm going along, because the word count doesn't mean anything if I know I have to delete it at the end of the book anyway. You see what I'm saying?
Right. See, so my writing process, so like I'm a plotter. So I plot most things ahead of time. With each book, I have plotted. Ooh, it is windy as fuck over here, y'all. So I plot the magic system. I plotted the magic system. I plotted the story and kind of some of the rules for the different powers. Because when it comes to necromancy, a lot of people will say, will see Zora's power, like, okay, so she's a necromancer and a medium, but I put them in my world, put them together as one and the same. Just dead things is necromancy. And so I did all that ahead of time, and then I wrote it, and I write in acts. I write kind of a different Word document with each of the different acts. That way it's less of a, oh, I need to go back and fix this. It's not just this one huge ass Word document. I have the different acts. And I do rewrite at the very end. But as I'm writing, if I'm writing something and I know I want to enhance a section, I need to explain something more, I'll leave little notes for myself. And then if it's like an overarching thing, add more magic, add more this, then I will write it in a separate note stock that I keep up as that I have as I'm writing. So then when I go back to rewrite and I send my beta feedback, I know what I want them to look for. And I kind of have an idea of like what I'm going to start doing when I actually get my book back. And I make sure that I take a break from it while it's with betas so that when I can look at it, I'm looking at it with fresh eyes. But I think it's hard to not self-edit, especially, like I said, if you have works out. Because when I was writing the second book, so To Lars in Desperation, I had a lot of moments of self-editing. There's a scene in the book, if you haven't read it, where they're doing a protest on La Brea, which is in LA. And this scene is kind of one of the most magic heavy scenes I've ever written, and I fucking love it. But it took a lot of versions for me to get to what it is, which is that there are all these potions that the police have that they're using against witches, and they're being thrown at witches, and they're ones that like they hit you and it'll break a bone, or it'll suffocate you, right, steal your breath, or it'll give you like poison ivy, or it'll paralyze you, things like that. And there's one that like will just kill you off top. So that I was didn't use that much, but it took a lot to get to what it ultimately ended up being, because I had them starting in on the Walk of Fame, and I was writing the entire scene, and I wasn't getting to the action fast enough, and I kept working it, and doubting myself. I took a couple days away from it, and then on one Saturday morning, I just sat at my desk and I didn't let myself get up until I finished it. And like 3-4 hours later, my hands hurt, my wrists hurt, my back hurt. I was thirsty as shit. I was hungry as shit, but the scene was written. And I was supremely proud of it. And most of what I wrote is what made it into the book, with a couple, obviously my editor looked at it and a couple tweaks from me. But I'm so tremendously proud of that scene. And what it took was that I had to fail. I had to try to write it and it not be right. I had to recognize that this is not what I want to say. I had to realize what would make the most sense for this. I had to, initially, it was not Mercury that gets paralyzed. It was one of the other groups. But then I was like, why do things keep happening to other people? He's fallible. I need to show that. So like, again, for those of you who read it and haven't read it, Mercury gets hit with a paralyzing potion and it locks him up. So his whole body is paralyzed. It's basically all he can do is breathe. He can't blink, he can't move his, and eventually he starts to get it back. And that's kind of like some of the comedy in the book a little bit, is when he's trying to talk and trying to do things that he can't do it. So that was very much like, this shit needs to be a movie, because I want to see an actor try to stretch themselves, trying to walk all straight-legged and your knees are locked, and trying to talk and your tongue don't move.
But no, I love that though, because the transparency is the self. I feel like, okay, and I say this, and you guys may not like me for it, right? I feel like there's some very common writing advice out there, and it's solid advice if when you are a new writer and you don't really have a process yet. And I feel like don't edit as you write is one of those very wide arcing pieces of advice,
right,
that are for when you are brand new to writing. And it's important because it's just like, you don't want to get caught up in editing that you don't finish the story. But I do feel like there's a certain level, once you feel comfortable with your writing, where self-editing as you go is important. Like you need to master that skill because you are going to want to sit down. It is a very important skill to have, to sit down and look at your writing and be like, this isn't it. You know, a lot of your changes do come from editing and from betas and from feedback and from other people. But there's also a skill where you have to look at your own work objectively and be like, this is not the best that I can do. This I can do better, or this isn't where I want to go, or this is the reason the story isn't working, and so I'm going to go ahead and change it. And
Mm-hmm.
kind of, I would say for me, divorcing yourself from the idea that every word that I write has to be kept, and diversing yourself from this idea that the word count needs to be X, Y, and Z. Like, for sure, if you're going for a novel, yes, you need at least 40,000 words. But when you're on your first 10,000, you're nowhere near that. So it doesn't
Right.
really matter, you know?
Yeah. And even when you're on your first draft, it doesn't matter because that
Mm-mm.
word count may increase or decrease when you're drafting. I totally agree with you that if as you're writing, because I think that that's one of the things that leads to writer's block, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have written something and you tell yourself, so what your advice is also coupled with the whole just get the words on the page and your first draft should be crappy. Those two things kind of go hand in hand for me, of
Mm-hmm.
like, don't edit as you're writing, write a crappy first draft, because yes, it is one thing to say you need to get your draft done because then you can edit it, you can always go back and edit it, you can't edit a blank page. But at the same time, if you are writing something and as you're writing it, your brain is going, this isn't working, I don't like this don't make sense, and you find yourself consistently getting stuck with the section that you're writing, that is I wouldn't say that's your editing brain, that's your intuition. And you got to
Yeah.
listen to your intuition because maybe it's not there's not enough tension, or your character, like you said, like going to Asari's domain when she needs to go to Lindell and this isn't right. Being able to pivot that as you're writing, that I think is what you need to be doing versus like I'm trying to write this spell. I can't write this spell and spending 3-4 days trying to figure out. Girl, just write a little like bracket. Do you know how many? I think I sent this to beta readers with that, but like how many times I wrote spell for killing somebody here, like spell for ending life, spell for love, in the brackets in the book, and you know what I mean, like that to me is the shit that like don't bother with if you don't have a mind for it at the time, because you can come back and do it. But if it's like, prime example with a short story that I worked on, initially I had it where it was going to be this huge thing, it was going to be very like Hunger Games meets All of Us Villains, where there's this magical trial and all these people have to go through this magical trial to see who'll be queen. And the idea just did not work, like it just was not vibing. I started writing and it just wasn't working, it didn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped it. I completely started the short story over on like Wednesday. So from Wednesday to Monday, I had to write over 6,000 words. Struggle for me because that's not, I don't usually write every day. But what I
Mm-hmm.
came up with was much better. There's much more tension because I made it, instead of all these other outside people having to do this trial, it's just two sisters. They're
Mm-hmm.
princesses. Their father's like, y'all were born back to back. I can't decide who's going to be queen. So y'all have to battle. You have to do this like sovereign set, is what I called it. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
series of 4 trials. That's like, you have to do the heart, which is like you have to co-host a ball together. You have to do the club, which is like you have to sit and be a monarch, and people are going to tell you their problems, and you're going to tell them how you're going to fix it. You have to do the diamond, which is a magical battle, and then the spade, which is a physical battle.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to do all of these things. And once you've completed all of these things, then I'm going to decide, okay, who's going to be queen. And instead of having so many more people involved, I had to go, okay, this is only 6,500 words. I need to just make it about them two, their beef, what they're going to have to do to battle each other. And once I kind of figured out why the story wasn't working and leaned into that intuition, I was really able to have traction and write and just jump into the story every day. Because if you have a deadline, you kind of do have to do that. You have to be able to be like,
Yeah.
get
So
it
I
done.
would also say that because I know for me, I had tried writing We Are the Origin several times. And for those of you who have read it, I had written 40,000 words of just purely up to the point where they were leaving, where they were leaving meeting one of the main characters, Sarah. I have 40,000 words of that. And in the actual final draft of the book, that's like 2 chapters, y'all. Like they come, they meet, they go, and it's just like I had learned, and I'm still learning a lot through this process. But one of the biggest things that if I can say nothing else, is don't fight your brain. If your brain is telling you to edit, do not fight it. If your brain is telling you to keep going, don't fight it and go back and edit. If your brain is telling you to take a break, take a break. If your brain is telling you sit down in the chair and write, do it. Because if you fight your brain, that's how you end yourself up in a writer's block. Because your brain is basically like, it goes on strike. At least that's how it is for me. It's like, you ain't want to listen to me no way, so why am I going to give you any instructions?
Right. Yeah, and I think that's also important. I saw this video that was so insightful. I think I reposted it on TikTok. That this lady was talking about writer's block and how it's not always the same issue, right? We think, okay, you have writer's block, the solution is just to rest. But there are different types of writer's block, right? So if, let's say, you're in the process of writing something and it is not working, that's a different solution than, you're trying to write something and maybe you don't, because you don't have a full mind for it, you're not feeling like it's working. Well, then the solution for that is to take a break and let it percolate. Go do something else. Maybe do something creative or do something that helps you get ideas. Like, how many times have we been sitting there doing dishes or cooking or something, and then something pops in your head because you're not focused? Do something else where you're not focused on it. But if you can't do that necessarily if you're writing something that it is not working on the page, because all you're going to do is just leave it not working on the page, and you're going to dread having to come back to that thing that's not working, when what you need to do with that is nip it in the bud first, then like start over, delete it, put it in the draft. Like, I have an extra document with just a bunch of stuff. Maybe I'll use it later. I just need to not see it on this page right now. That's what you need to do when you have that type.
I would say this: respect your graveyard. I don't know if y'all do this or not. You need to have a graveyard so that when you write something, even if it's just one sentence and you're just like, I really like this sentence, but it doesn't fit here, put it in your graveyard. That way you came up with it, you can pull from it later, even if it's for a different story, a different book, a different series. You can pull from your graveyard at a later time. And giving yourself freedom to write. That's why a lot of times when people say editing, when I think of editing, I think it's done, right? Because any other time it's a rewrite. And embracing rewrites is kind of the key to writing. Just be like, give yourself a blank document and work from it. And kind of going back to what you said earlier about like having a separate document, I keep all of my notes in OneNote. So as I'm writing, like one example is like my 2 main characters, Jack and Brandy. They are an established couple. At one point, they have an argument in the book, and the very first draft of it, that argument was not giving everything it needed to. And so, but I was just like, I don't know what's missing. The argument needs to happen. I know it's going to start this way. I know it's going to end this way. It's just the middle needs to be beefed up. So for me, that wasn't a rewrite. That wasn't something where I went back and fixed it right in that moment. That I just opened another document. I labeled it, chapter whatever. And then I made a note to myself, and I date it. I always date my notes. That way I know when I go back, like, is this something I've already fixed, or is this something that's still like present? And then I'm like, hey, on this day, I decided, go back and beef up this argument or whatever. That way, when I got to the end and I was going back through all of my notes, I was like, oh, I need to go back to chapter so-and-so, and I need to revisit the conversation. And what that does for me is I have distance from that section of the story. So then I can look at that part of the story with fresh eyes, even if I just finished writing another section of the story that day. That way I can still feel like I'm being productive and making progress without having to be like, I have to create every single day.
Right.
That's also important.
Yeah. And I think you kind of the last thing I'll say on this is I think you have to do what's important for you. So because I had a lot of rewrites scheduled for this book, because there was a lot that I knew I needed to do. I created a whole new document. I started writing this in a completely different Google Doc. I re-outlined it. I had Chelsea and I think 1 or 2 other people look at the outline, because I wanted to make sure that I was in the right place. Because again, there were some plot points that needed to be fixed, the characterization needed to be fixed, and so I went and I did that. Not everybody's going to need to do that. Some people might just be able to edit what's already on the page, but for me, my brain and my anxiety and all of who I am needed to start and operate from a completely blank page and integrate the stuff that I'd already written as needed into the document. Because if I didn't, I would be looking at what I had already written and feeling guilty and feeling bad that wasn't working. And I have all of these beta reader notes, some of which I'm looking at, but because I'm overhauling so much of it, I'm like, okay, these are notes from that version. I don't necessarily need to carry them all. And the other thing I'm doing, because I am on deadline, is I'm having people actively reading this as I'm writing it. So Chelsea, a couple other people are acting as like beta readers, technically alpha readers, right? Because you're reading it as I'm writing it, so that I can per chapter, so I can meet my deadline. So I think, with all of this writing advice, the important through line is do whatever works best for you and your process for you to be able to put your books out there. And if that is writing every day, if that's writing once a week, if that is starting from a blank document every time you rewrite, or rewriting in the same document, because with my previous two books, I just did the rewrites in the same document. So your process also might change, and be open to the fact that might happen too. And just really try to listen to your gut and your brain and give it what it needs.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what all writing boils down to. I personally write in the same document, and then rewrites, I write in a separate document. But I only copy over like the last paragraph of what I'm planning to integrate it with, and then I go from there.
Right.
So if you guys get the final copy of the book, especially you, Amanda, because you've read it already, I've sent you like scenes separately, and it's just like, this is how I'm planning to integrate it into the story. So it depends on what you feel comfortable with, But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I know you said you only have an hour, so I don't want to keep running my mouth, because I will.
Oh yeah, no. This was great. I definitely want to do this again. Let us know if y'all found this helpful, if you enjoyed this, because again, I know I've been away from my YouTube channel for a while. Shame on me. But I'm trying to come back and be more consistent. And one of the things I realized about myself, see again, knowing yourself is kind of a through line here, is that I like this format of live. It's a little less pressure than having to pre-do a script and having to sit down and do all the shenanigans and then edit. It's less stressful for me. And so this might just be the way that I do my YouTube videos from now on, or at least, some of them. So y'all let me know if this is helpful. This is very helpful. Thank you.
Awesome.
And this might just be kind of a trend for me. So, and hopefully Chelsea will join frequently,
Oh, I'm always
because
going to
we
be
love
here.
her. We
You
love
just send me a
you.
message. I'm down to run my mouth whenever.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so we're going to wrap up here. We're going to give our socials and call it good. So thank you, y'all, for tuning in. Again, I'm Amanda the author, or Amanda Ross. You can find my books at the link in my bio. To a Stare with Love and To a Earth and Desperation are out. They are two parts of a three-part series. The third book I will be working on after I finish this book, In the House of Transcendence, that I'm currently working on. In the House of Transcendence is out September 22nd. So this is out the autumnal equinox. Yes, leaning into all the witchiness here. If you want to see what I'm at, what I'm about, you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Amanda the Author with two E's, Amanda the Author with one E. That's my piece. Chelsea, what about you?
Oh, okay. So you guys know I'm a fantasy author. I write books about Black girls who aren't all that nice. And my book, We Are the Origin, is coming out June 21st. And you can grab a copy from any major retailer, the ebook. If you want the physical copy, you can get that from my website. You can also get the ebook from there too, just throwing that out there. And y'all know I have a YouTube channel. It's Written in Melanin. We have a live chat, Melanin Chat, every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you like podcasts, I have one called the Written in Melanin Podcast. Shocker, I know, very unique name. And I talk about my author journey and just what I'm going through, what I'm dealing with, and everything in between, from personal life to writing life to, running the Melanin Library. That being said, I am also the owner of the Melanin Library, an online database for books by Black authors. Can't talk. So you can check that out at melaninlibrary.com. And you can follow me on socials at C Lockhart Write, and written the letter N, Melanin, pretty much on Instagram and TikTok, and also Twitter. I don't really do Instagram anymore. I don't really claim that, but I'm there if you need me. So yeah,
Awesome.
that's it.
Well, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for those who tuned in now, and for those who watch in the future. Thank you, and we'll catch y'all later.
Bye.